Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
The blood crow is growing. It only took a moment to start from the small blood crow after defeating it, to the huge crow that devoured the evil head. After devouring the evil moving head that contained the godhead, the crow of death, which had swelled to a size of tens of meters, exuded a terrifying aura and attacked Sumu, who was holding the evil-killing arm and the scythe of the god of death. Sumu. Naturally, it has already been prepared. After suppressing the attack of the death scythe with the fusion of the power of space and the power of the world, he has always maintained this superimposed state of the space in the temple and the abyss world space. At this time, the death scythe has arrived. As long as he takes back the power of space and the power of the world, everything in this space superimposed with the abyss world will be brought to the abyss world by him. Dimensional demon god, innately undefeated. If he didn't have enough support, why would he come to explore this ancient battlefield with a high-ranking demigod? Only by the assurance of the fire of wisdom and the restraint of the Dark Council? At this moment, as soon as Sumu thought about it, he was ready to take back the space superimposed with the temple. Not just the filthy arm, the scythe of the god of death, the many broken cobes and broken artifacts in the hall. Even the crow of death wants to be dragged into his own abyss. The crow of death is calculating Sumu. Isn't Sumu calculating the crow of death? It's just that, in this calculation and being calculated, it's just to see whose means are higher and whose trump card is stronger. To Sumu's move. The crow of death was obviously expected. If she doesn't have enough cards and means to fight the abyss world, why would she join forces with a dimension demon to explore the temple? Why would she snatch the death scythe when it was already caught by a dimension demon? At this moment, while revealing the main body and attacking Sumu, a small stone bell emerged from the mouth of the death crow and shook it gently. In an instant, space shaking. Sumu, who was about to recover the power of space and the power of the world, felt at this moment that his connection with the abyss world was almost cut off. He dragged everything into the abyss world, and it was difficult for him to return to the abyss world himself. That's a prop. A one-off prop that is almost at the quality of an artifact. The only function of this item is to oscillate the space and temporarily cut off the connection between the dimensional devil and the dimensional world. Even if this severance lasts only a brief moment. Even if this kind of severance can only be aimed at the existence of the dimension demon god who has just entered the dimension. But in the case of full strength, just this moment of severance is enough to let the crow of death suppress a dimension demon whose body is only the peak sanctuary. Capture the scythe of death. Ugh. The crisp croning resounded in the space in the entire temple. The full-strength crow of death also attacked Sumu at this moment. Black, gray, dark gold. 3 different kinds of brilliance circulated endlessly on the huge body. Even after defeating the evil seconds, the power of these 3 sources consumed a lot, and it was enough for the death crow to maintain the terrifying strength comparable to the peak demigod at this moment. Sumu's strength, the crow of death has already figured out. The main body is the peak sanctuary. Combined with the skills that can cut out the dark sword light, it is enough to reach the attack power of the lower demigods. If you add the white bone demon body composed of countless bones, the body of the dimension demon god, it should be able to exert the combat power of the median demigod. This is a miracle. It is of course a miracle that a dimension demon god whose body is only a peak sanctuary has combat power comparable to that of a median demigod. But under the circumstance of his full strength, under the circumstance that he maintains his peak demigod level combat power, Crow of Death has absolute confidence to suppress and kill Sumu in this moment. Take away the scythe of the god of death. Half an instant. The body of the Raven of Death, which had swelled to a size of hundreds of meters, had already rushed in front of Sumu. The jet-black wings fluttered, slashing out 2 black lights, and attacked Sumu's arm, the huge and sharp bird beak pecked down, aiming directly at the head of the skeleton god of war, open the huge body of the skeleton god of war and kill Sumu's hidden body. Red Gug was murder. The purpose of the Raven of Death is simple. As long as the body of the Dimension Demon God is killed, the Death Scythe will naturally become her trophy. Obtaining the spoils in this way can not only monopolize the huge harvest in the temple, but also prevent Sumu from hiding after this battle and disturbing her after growing up. As for the constraints of the Dark Council, after this battle, the divinity harvested by the Crow of Death is enough to hit the pinnacle demigod. Coupled with the godhead contained in the head of the true god in the entire Dark Camp, she will be the most likely existence to successfully confer a god. How can you still care about the constraints of the Dark Council? Constraint. It has always been designated for the weak, not for the strong. As long as she has successfully conferred a god, not only will the Dark Council not restrain her, but it will become part of her forces. Half an instant. The lore of the Crow of Death has taken shape. Not to mention a peak sanctuary with mid-level demigod combat power. Even if it is in existence with upper-level demigod strength, the Crow of Death is absolutely sure to suppress it. However, when the lore came, in the vision of the Death Crow, the Dimension Demon God not only did not panic and despair, but showed a smile at this moment. This smile made the Crow of Death panic. What did she ignore? But, in the last half of a moment, she had no time to recall what she had overlooked. The black light from the wings successfully cut off an arm of the skeleton god of war. The huge arm that belonged to the skeleton god of war, together with the right arm that moved and the scythe of the god of death, fell towards the ground. The sharp bird beak tore open the skull of the skeleton god of war, shattering the huge skull composed of countless skeleton essences and turning it into countless broken tiny skeletons. The sharp claws lingering with the power of death also broke the shell of the skeleton god of war and was about to touch the body of Sumu hidden within the bone demon god. Everything is going smooth? However, the change that comes at the next moment makes the expression of the Death Crow change drastically. One arm of the skeleton god of war was cut off, and Sumu ignored it. The head of the skeleton god of war was torn apart, and Sumu still ignored it. The sharp claws that smashed his body were enough to break the shell of the skeleton of the god of war, and when he was about to endanger himself to the body, Shepherd. The only remaining arm of the skeleton god of war tightly held the part above the crow's claws, as if afraid of her escaping. Then, the connection between Sumu and the abyss world is restored. The power of space and the world, which is more intense than before, also enveloped all the space in this temple again. The Crow of Death is calculating Sumu. Why isn't Sumu calculating the Crow of Death? Let's see who hides deeper. 0. Ask for flowers. The Crow of Death hid the stone bell, intending to block Sumu's connection with the abyss world at the last moment, cut off his escape route, and kill the dimensional demon god whose body is only the peak sanctuary in one fell swoop. What about Sumu? He hid the true combat power of the skeleton god of war. He clearly has the strength to fight against the upper demigods, but he only showed the combat power of the middle demigods. Even in the face of the slash of the death god's scythe and the lore brought by the triple attack of the Raven of Death, he has never been exposed. It was not until the skeleton god of war was severely injured and the Crow of Death came to him that he made a bold move and grabbed a claw of the Crow of Death. He even hid the level of the abyss world. Whether it's suppressing the space-time storm or the death blow from the evil shift, the power of space and the power of the world that Sumu shows are all maintained when the abyss world has just stepped into the world level. Stone clock. This one-time item, which almost reaches the quality of an artifact, is enough to cut off the connection between a dimensional demon god and his dimensional world, creating a momentary killing time for the Crow. The higher the level of the dimensional world, the weaker the effect of the stone clock. If the abyss world is only a small world, level 1, the stone clock can completely disconnect Sumu from the abyss world for a moment, when the level of the abyss world reaches the small world, level 5. This severance of the stone clock can only last for half an instant. and not completely cut off. For mortals, half an instant can't even feel it. For the Death Crow, this half an instant is enough for her to shred Sumu's body with the sharp claws that broke the shell of the skeleton god of war and become the only winner of this exploration. For Sumu, this half a second time, it is also enough for him to fully unfold the Abyss world. Put everything in the temple, including the right arm of Siecheng that fell towards the ground, including the death sickle that contained the power of the ancient gods, including the many broken cobes that contain divinity in the hall, including the pieces and pieces that have long been broken, weapons and equipment, including the Crow of Death, the fifth speaker who is enough to exert the strength of the peak demigod level. Well, all this, all dragged into the Abyss world. The power of space has unfolded. The power of the world also returns. When he felt that the power of space and the world was several times stronger than before, the Crow of Death, who had been bound, began to panic. Horrified. Despair. Incredible. It is hard for her to imagine that this existence, whose real name is Abyss, has just become a dimensional devil, why his dimensional world has far exceeded that of a new dimensional devil. It is even more difficult for her to accept that her own strength is countless times stronger than the body of this dimension demon, and she still ends in this way. Outside the dimensional world, Sumu's body is weak and pitiful. Inside the dimensional world, he is a true god. Ugh. The crow chirping full of panic, fear, and despair resounded in the space, and the power of three different origins, death, bad luck, and greed, also burst out madly. Only, no matter what the Crow of Death does, how hard, she, who has been captured by the Abyss world, cannot escape the ending of being dragged into the Abyss world. Half an instant passed. Calm was restored in the temple. Sumu's figure has disappeared, together with the treasures of this temple, as well as the God of Crows, also disappeared from this temple. The battle is over. When Sumu returned to the Abyss world from the temple of the ancient battlefield, this war full of calculations and counter-calculations was over. In my own world, when the mind merges with the whole world and appears in the form of an Abyss demon, even if the real gods enter this world, they will be suppressed by him. Suppressed and killed. Not to mention a mere crow that has not been named a god. At this time, wilderness at the border of the Abyss world. Sumu's figure has emerged from the sky, dissipated the already dilapidated skeleton god of war form, and only appeared here in the form of the main body. And ahead of him, a huge crow is struggling desperately. Dozens of meters high. Hundreds of meters high. Thousands of meters high. When he realized that he had been dragged into his dimensional world by Sumu, the Crow of Death was full of panic and despair. Facing an evil second who can be called the lowest level in the level of the gods, and fighting only by instinct, no divine power, no priesthood, and even the divine armor has been weakened to the limit of the god-level evil process. It would take her all-out effort, and with Sumu's help to delay it, to defeat it. What's more, what about facing a real 657 god? A dimensional demon god in his own dimensional world is even more terrifying than the real gods who have just been conferred. Only, the crow who told the death did not want to accept his fate. Being dragged into his dimensional world by a dimensional demon god basically cannot avoid the two endings of being suppressed or killed. Either being suppressed forever, without seeing the light of day, or being directly killed, one's body, one's own divinity, and one's everything become the nutrients for the growth of this dimension demon god. It took countless years and countless disasters to grow to the present, when there is only one step away from the conferred gods. The Crow Su is naturally unwilling to be suppressed or killed at this last moment. She's going to work hard. She is going to fight. In this dimensional world, she is naturally not the opponent of the dimensional devil. 1. As long as he can escape from the dimension world, Sumu's body is still at the level of the peak sanctuary. When all the cards of the dimension demon god are revealed, As long as he can escape from the abyss world, the crow who sue for death will have absolute certainty to live. To this end, she does not hesitate to burn her own origin. In this way, you can gain power beyond your own realm and limit and rush out of the abyss world. The death crow that is thousands of meters high can be called a behemoth. 3 different brilliances of black, gray, and dark gold circulate on the huge body. When the crow of death burns its own divine power and origin, these 3 rays of light representing different origins also burn up, turning into 3 flames of different colors surround the crow of death. Triple flame. Burning on top of the dark and huge body. Only the eyes are blood red. Divine power burns. The source burns. At this moment, the breath that erupted from the dead crow almost reached the pinnacle of the pinnacle demigod. And after obtaining the power beyond his own rank at this price, the crow of death swayed desperately with its huge wings burning with triple flames, trying to get rid of the shackles of the abyss world and escape from this world. However, since the Raven of Death has been dragged into the abyss world, how could Sumu allow her to escape? Standing calmly in the sky, looking at the death crow thousands of meters away, when the crow of death broke out and sprinted out of the world, Sumu thought about it. Immediately, huge chains appeared out of thin air, blocking the huge crow inside. These chains. It is the embodiment of the laws and rules of the abyss world. They either rushed out of the earth, or out of the sky, or out of the mountains, the wilderness, and the rivers. At the moment of manifesting, it will block the crow of death in it. Each chain represents a law or rule of the abyss world. When these chains blocked the figure of the crow of death, at the end of each chain, thorns grew, breaking through the body defense of the crow of death without any hindrance, piercing into its flesh and blood. Next moment, the most pure erosive power erupted directly from the heart of the world in the abyss world, and injected into the body of the crow of death along the chains formed by these laws and rules. A demigod. Moreover, it is a demigod who has reached the level of an upper demigod and is only one step away from being a conferred god. For such an enemy, whether it is to suppress or kill him, devour his divinity, and plunder his divine power, it is a waste. At least, this is a huge waste when there is an alternative. Erosion. Enslavement. Turning such an existence into his most loyal subordinate is the way the crow of death will deal with the final value of Sumu. The power of erosion merged and began to erode the body of this huge crow. At this moment, feeling the erosion of that power on him, the crow of death was even more desperate. Ugh. 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 The sound of crows, full of panic and despair, continued to sound between heaven and earth. Even if he burns his own divine power, burns his own origin, and struggles desperately, the only thing the crow of death can do is to shake the countless chains that have penetrated into his body. This desperate struggle. Not only did it fail to free her from the blockade and bondage of the chain of laws, but it made the wounds on her body get bigger and bigger. Large drops of blood dripped. Along these unchained chains of wound law are embedded deeper and more erosive infused. The vibration of the chain is the vibration of the laws and rules. When the laws and rules of the entire abyss world shook a little with the crow's struggle, the many abyss lords in the abyss world suddenly noticed it. Immediately, with the authority granted by Sumu, they mobilized the power of the world, found the source of the vibration of laws and rules, and also appeared near this wild area with the help of the power of the world. As soon as it appears, they saw the huge crow that was blocked by countless chains, bound by countless chains, and pierced by countless chains. When all the pit lords are at the sanctuary level, the appearance of giant crows with their heads reaching the pinnacle demigod level naturally shocked them extremely. But it was just the aura that it exuded that made them feel terrifying, but under the blockade, binding, and erosion of countless chains, there was no ability to resist at all. This is the Dimension Demon. This is the power of their lord. For a time, tens of thousands of meters apart, these abyss lords knelt down on one knee, expressing their loyalty and admiration to their lord. The appearance of 1,000 Abyss Lords is naturally in Sumu's perception. Through the connection between the souls, keeping them out of the way, Sumu's mind continued to be immersed in the erosion of the Raven of Death. Slowly, more and more erosive power was injected into the law chain, and the Crow of Death gradually lost its control over its body. When the power of erosion completely eroded the huge body of the Crow of Death, it moved towards its brain and soul. When it starts to erode, Sumu took a step forward and appeared in front of the Crow of Death. Demon form. The body revealed by the Crow of Death has swelled to a height of thousands of meters, and Sumu, who appeared in the form of a demon, turned into a giant of thousands of feet in a single thought. The erosion of the Abyss world to the Death Crow is slavery. Sumu's own erosion of the Crow of Death is also slavery. The only difference between the two is, being corroded and enslaved by Sumu himself, he can read his memory, and even if he can't digest it immediately, he can also record all the huge memories of the Crow of Death and then slowly digest and absorb it in the future. A demigod who is about to be consecrated, the memory in his soul is also an extremely huge wealth. Whether it is various secret techniques, various skills, or various knowledge, none of the sanctuaries under his command can compare. Such a wealth. Naturally not to be missed. Sumu shot. The power possessed in the form of the demon god suppressed the struggle and resistance of the Death Crow. The power of erosion, which was more pure than the power of erosion from the Abyss world, also quickly invaded the head of the dead crow with Sumu's hand covering the crow's head. At this moment, instead, the Crow of Death stopped struggling. What she fears is repression, death. Her divinity will be plundered, her flesh and blood will be swallowed up, and her soul will be vanished after countless years of hard work. Compared to being suppressed for eternity and disappearing completely, being enslaved by a dimensional demon, on the contrary, it is not so difficult to accept. What Sumu wanted was slavery, not slaughter. When that erosive force eroded his body, when Sumu personally eroded his soul, the Crow of Death understood this 5.5 point. After accepting this unalterable reality, the Crow of Death calmed down and stopped resisting. Let the power of erosion erode its head, erode its soul, and spy on its memory. When the Crow of Death no longer resisted, Sumu's erosion of the fifth speaker also accelerated a lot. He accepted the huge memory from the Crow of Death and stored it in his mind. When the power of erosion completely occupied the head of the Crow of Death and eroded the soul of the demigod, ding! You have gained control of the Crow of Death, Olivia. You enslaved Crow of Death, Olivia. The system prompt tone is the best prompt. When the system's prompt sounded, Sumu's mind moved, and he returned from the demon form to his original form, and the chain of law that sealed the sky and locked the earth quietly disappeared. High in the sky, that huge crow that is thousands of meters on its head. It also quietly disappeared at this moment. Instead, it was a slender figure with black feathers covering his body and appeared in front of Sumu. The Crow of Death pays homage to the Lord. An exploration of the ancient battlefield, Sumu became the ultimate winner. Not only the head of the true god containing the godhead, the sickle of the god of death containing the power of the ancient gods, and the numerous broken cobes and broken artifacts in the temple are all in his hands. Even the Crow of Death, a high-ranking demigod who was close to being conferred, became his trophy. Greedy Demon King. This is Sumu's positioning of the Raven of Death. Corresponds to greed among the 7 deadly sins. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse now have Death Knight Agnes and Desolation Knight Augustine. Although Agnes and Augustine are still at the sanctuary level, as the owners of the ultimate professional Death Knights and Baron Knights, Agnes and Augustine have infinite potential. Don't say demigods. Even ordinary gods are by no means the potential focus of Agnes and Augustine. Compared with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the collection of the 7 deadly sins is too slow. In addition to the gluttonous insect king, the Crow of Death, Olivia, a demigod who has the power of greed as his source, just started to fill in the progress of the 7 deadly sins. Greed Demon King, This is Sumu's position for Olivia's future. Of course, the current Olivia is just staying at the level of the greedy Crow King, which is better than the gluttonous Insect King, but not much better. Demon King. This name is not 01. Players and the many aborigines in the main material world can compare a powerful monster with the title of Demon King. Demon King. Demon King corresponds to the God King among the gods. Just from the title of Demon King of Greed, we can see Sumu's expectations for the future of the 7 deadly sins, and we can also see Sumu's ambitions for his own future. Of course, this is all for later. Olivia the Crow of Death surrendered and became one of the 7 deadly sins under Sumu's command, which not only improved the collection progress of the 7 deadly sins, but also greatly improved the strength of the Abyss world. A high-ranking demigod. In addition to the Abyss world, this newly added Death Crow is the most powerful combat power in the Abyss world. If it hadn't been hidden deep enough, Olivia would have been shaded by the Abyss world. In absolute strength, Sumu is actually no match for Olivia. Of course, that is only now. Now that he has harvested a lot of broken gods and broken artifacts, as long as he devours a little bit of divinity and moves his rank from the peak of the sanctuary to the realm of demigods, Sumu's combat power will usher in a new surge. By that time, defeat Olivia is not a very difficult thing. A high-ranking demigod joins the Abyss world, which is a big event. The harvest and distribution of the many spoils of war is even more of a major event. Think about it. Sumu thought about it and took Olivia and the many Abyss lords who were watching from 10,000 meters away and returned to the Abyss Hall. Back to his throne. Sumu glanced at the Abyss Hall. As the #1 fighting force in the current Abyss world, when Olivia surrendered, Sumu was also generous. Not only a little bit of the power of the origin of the world representing the identity of the Abyss Lord was injected into Olivia's soul, and it was integrated with it. It is even more willing to consume a part of the world's origin to restore Olivia's injury. So, after returning to the Abyss Hall, the Crow of Death, who burned his divine power and his own origin to fight, not only did not because of this time's resistance decline. On the contrary, because of the injection of the world origin of the Abyss world, it has reached a higher level. Only one step away from the pinnacle of demigods. The Abyss Lords took their seats one by one. With a wave of Sumu's hand, the many broken cobes and broken artifacts from the ancient temple, as well as the right arm and the death scythe from a true god appeared in the hall. At this time, Olivia also obediently spit out the head of the true god that contained the godhead and added it to the pile of spoils. The harvest this time is not bad. Nothing else. Just the head of the true god that contains the godhead, and the sickle of the god of death containing the power of the ancient gods, is enough to make any demigod or even a true god go crazy. If the Fire of Wisdom knew that Sumu would have such a gain, I'm afraid he will regret revealing the spatial coordinates of the ancient battlefield. Booty. Among them, the scythe of the god of death is naturally owned by Sumu himself. With this ancient artifact containing the power of ancient gods, as long as Sumu devours a little more divinity, he will enter the realm of demigods. Even outside the Abyss world, he also has the trump card to fight against the true god, and even hurt the true god. In this way, in the following Dark Conferring Gods and the Awakening of the Gods more than a year later, he also has enough confidence to carry out his next plan. Broken Kobe and Broken Artifact. The most valuable part of these cobes and artifacts is the divinity contained in them. Dozens of broken cobes and dozens of broken artifacts, even if each part contains only a little bit of divinity, adding up these cobes and artifacts is hundreds of points of divinity. Coupled with the head and right arm of the true god, this is more than 100 points of divinity. Possessing the most basic bit of divinity is the basis for stepping into the demigod realm. In the demigod realm, 10 points of divinity is a level. 10 points of divinity, corresponding to level 91. 20 points of divinity, corresponding to level 92. 30 points of divinity, corresponding to level 93. Below 30 points of divinity, that is, below level 93, it is a lower demigod. By analogy, when a demigod has 91 points of divinity and his level reaches the full level of 100, a demigod has entered the level of a pinnacle demigod. If a demigod has accumulated 100 points of divinity, he can be consummated as a demigod at any time. In terms of optimal utilization, obviously, Sumu devoured all these divinities and raised his level and divinity to the level of a perfect demigod. The value of function is the highest and the utilization rate is also the highest. Because, with the abyss world around, Sumu hardly has to worry about other demigods interfering with his consecration ceremony. And after he was successfully conferred a god, he had all kinds of trump cards. When he was just conferred a god, he was almost able to exert the terrifying combat power of a lower god or even a middle god. Only, there are two problems. First, experience points. The experience value required for Sumu's level up is dozens of times that of other similar levels. For a demigod to raise his level from 91 to the full level of 100, he would need a lot of experience points. When this demand has expanded dozens of times, even if there are more than 6 million players in the Abyss camp to provide experience points, this is not a process that can be completed in a short time. Second, divinity. Divine devouring requires digestion. After a demigod obtains divinity, only after a period of digestion and complete integration of this divinity with himself can this bit of divinity truly become his own divinity. At this point, even free points won't help. It doesn't take long to swallow and digest a bit of divinity, that is, a month or two. 1. When Hay 660 conferred god was about to come, and when the gods were about to wake up from their slumber, Sumu had no time to devour and digest enough divinity to allow himself to ascend to the sky in one step. Step into the pinnacle of demigods and even the demigods of perfection ranks. Instead, Olivia, there is a possibility. In short, apotheosis is necessary, but not now. Rather than occupying all of these divinities himself, Sumu hopes to improve the strength of these abyss lords under his command. After all, the next game world is a real world of great competition. It is not impossible for a war of gods and gods like the ancient times to break out again. If you can't use this last time to improve the strength of the many abyss lords under your command. As the intensity of the war increased, the gap between these abyss lords and their own strength will also increase. Finally, when the battle between the gods and the gods breaks out, the abyss lords can't help themselves at all, leaving themselves in a situation of fighting alone. So, after thinking for a while, Sumu made a decision. In the next 2 months, all abyss lords will improve their level as much as possible to reach the peak of the sanctuary. Then, with the help of these divinities, step into the demigod realm. Let all the abyss lords step into the demigod realm. The divinity contained in these broken cobes and broken artifacts is enough. To this end, Sumu intends to change the distribution ratio of the experience points harvested from players by imparting skills. I no longer take 90%, but 10%. With the fastest speed, let the many abyss lords under his command reach the peak of the sanctuary and enter the demigods. Dozens of broken cobes containing divinity, dozens of broken artifacts containing divinity, these are enough to make all the abyss lords under Sumu step into the level of lower demigods. Next is the focus of this harvest. The head and right arm of a true god. A right arm, which contains more than 10 points of divinity, is enough to make Sumu step into the realm of a lower demigod. The point is, the head of the true god, and the godhead contained in that head. Sumu waved his hand, and the head that belonged to the true god appeared in his hand. After a brief inspection, Sumu determined the ownership of the head based on the system prompts displayed in his field of vision. God of Doom. This head, this right arm, came from the god of misfortune in ancient times. The godhead contained in the head is also the godhead of doom. After enslaving Olivia, Sumu also got a lot of information from her memory. In the past thousands of years, Olivia has explored the ancient battlefield countless times, and gained a lot of divinity from those ancient battlefields, pushing her to the level of a high-ranking demigod. At the same time, in the process of exploring the ancient battlefield, Olivia also obtained a lot of information, some of which pointed to Sumu and the ancient battlefield that she explored together. Approaching the gods. Olivia naturally also needs to prepare. Not only the preparation for divinity and the power of faith, but more importantly, the preparation for the priesthood that you will be in charge of after you become a god. Doom, Greedy. These three powers are the original powers that Olivia has already mastered. Among them, the power of death can be said to be the source power that most of the demigods of the Dark Camp have mastered. Taking death as one's own divine vocation, the achievement of the god of death is certainly powerful. However, when many dark demigods intend to consecrate gods, taking death as their vocation is not only difficult, but also less likely to succeed in consecrating gods. And distractions. So, when trying to consecrate a god, Olivia simply gave up the priesthood of death. For her to choose is bad luck and greed. Greed is an emotion and a sin. Before this, very few people used this kind of power as their own source of power to consecrate the gods. In the absence of sufficient experience as a reference, there may be various problems with greed as one's own oracle. In contrast, bad luck has become Olivia's best choice. Exactly. From the information collected during countless explorations of ancient battlefields, Olivia discovered that the god of doom in ancient times once participated in the siege of the second-generation ancient gods. And after that siege, there was no more information about the god of doom. Great probability. That ancient god of doom fell in that ancient battlefield and that temple. So, only then did Olivia explore the ancient battlefield again and again, and after knowing that Sumu was a dimension demon, she invited him to explore the ancient battlefield together. Everything is to verify whether the god of doom really fell in that temple. The Crow of Death is an ominous crow that brings death and bad luck. The Clergy of Doom fits Olivia very well. If she succeeds in obtaining the relic from the god of doom, the possibility of her being conferred a god on the next Dark Goddess Day will be greatly improved. Pity. First and foremost. It's only a half-a-second gap. Not only did Olivia fail to get the biggest chance, she even became the subordinate of the abyss demon god Sumu. At this time, when Sumu got the head of the god of doom and checked its information, Olivia still couldn't help the longing in her heart. She is already a pit lord. When a little source from the abyss world merges with her soul, she has become a part of the abyss world. But she still yearns to get the godhead of doom and become the god of doom. This is the best way for her to become a god. On the throne. Sumu thought for a while quietly. Then, he waved his hand gently, and the head of the true god that contained the godhead of doom returned to Olivia's hands. At the same time, Sumu also opened the authority for Olivia so that Olivia can harvest the experience points of the players in the Abyss Camp by teaching skills so that she can raise her level from 99 to 100 as soon as possible. Class. Lord. This. The Godhead of Doom is lost and regained. Holding the head of the true god back in her hands, Olivia was a little surprised. The day of the darkness conferring gods may not catch up. In the next time, you must raise your level and divinity to the level of a consummate demigod as soon as possible. When the time comes, this king will personally protect you and make you the first true god in the Abyss world. The god of misfortune. Doom is back in hand. As the Lord of the Abyss, Olivia can hold the ceremony of consecration in the Abyss world. Coupled with the personal protection of Sumu, the Abyss demon god, it is almost certain that she can be 100% successful and become the god of doom in the future. Only a godhead. Will the Lord not be moved? Seemingly seeing Olivia's question, Sumu chuckled lightly. It's just a godhead of doom, and it won't make this king's heart move. The future of this king is not something that a godhead of bad luck can carry. If the king guessed correctly. In addition to bad luck, you can also incorporate greed, and Raven into your priesthood when you hold the ceremony of consecration, right? Olivia nodded. What does the Lord want? Since you don't have to hurry, don't consecrate the gods with bad luck as the priesthood alone. Incorporate Greed and Raven into your ministry as well. Greed, from one of Olivia's origins, the power of greed, just like the power of fear mastered by Sumu. And the crow. Born in the Crow clan, when she was conferred a god, Olivia could also add crow to her clergy, making herself the supreme ruler of all crow races in the entire game world, and letting the countless crows as the leader. The wise creatures from her birth became her family and followers. It is naturally much more difficult to condense one's godhead with the three powers of Doom, Greed, and Raven than by using Doom as the priesthood alone. When the ceremony of conferring the gods is held, the time required and the dangers faced are much greater. Only, with the protection of the Abyss World and Sumu, the possibility of mastering the three priesthoods just after being conferred not only exists, but also has a great possibility of success. And, once successfully consecrated with these three priesthoods, after Olivia becomes a god, her potential and growth rate will also be greatly improved. E.T. As ordered. A battle that plunges yourself into the abyss. But this kind of sinking not only did not let him die, but he gave him a 100% chance of successfully consecrating the gods, as well as the possibility of mastering the three major priesthoods, and the possibility of a more brilliant future. This continuous reversal of falling from heaven to hell and then returning to heaven from hell made Olivia so excited that she couldn't help herself. Go. With a slight smile, Sumu let Olivia leave with the head of the true god. As the strongest Abyss Lord, it is extremely simple for Olivia to create a base for herself in the Abyss world. With the divinity contained in the head of the true god and the experience points from the players, it is only a matter of time before this Crow of Death will advance his rank to the level of a consummate demigod. Wait until Olivia successfully parses and integrates the godhead of the God of Doom and has a sufficient understanding of the two priesthoods of Greed and Raven. Sumu can begin Olivia's consecration ceremony. At that time, the first true god of the Abyss world will be born. Olivia leaves. After the other Abyss Lords divided up the divinity contained in those cobes and artifacts, they also left. The appearance of Olivia, the Abyss Lord who was about to confer a god, made them feel the crisis. It also made them realize that only by improving their strength as soon as possible can they keep up with the growth rate of the Lord. Divinity in hand. Almost all the experience points from the players are also allocated to them. In this case, almost every Abyss Lord can't wait to advance to a demigod and become a reliable combat power that can share the worries of the Master again. The Abyss Hall became quiet again. Looking at the empty Abyss Hall, Sumu thought about it, and the only remaining arm of the true god appeared in his hand. A true god with at least 101 points of divinity. As the true god's strength grows, the divinity possessed by the true god will also grow. After all, after becoming a true god, you can condense your divinity and enhance yourself. The god of misfortune should be the next god. Wangwang's, even if the part with the most divinity is the head and torso, the arm that Sumu is holding contains at least 10 points of divinity. Olivia, about to be consecrated. Those Abyss Lords are about to become demigods. Before this, Sumu also has to advance his own realm from the level of the peak sanctuary to the level of a demigod. Mind a move. The power of erosion poured out and began to erode this arm from the true god. Not only in this way to obtain the divinity in the arm of the true god, but also to prevent the power and imprint of the God of Doom from remaining in this arm. Faced with the legacy of a true god, no amount of caution can be overstated. Not just this arm. When looking at the head of the God of Fortune, Sumu also eroded the head of the God of Fortune in this way without Olivia's knowledge, except for the remaining power, imprint, and remnants stretch. Only, it did not absorb the divinity and godhead in it. Now, on the basis of eroding this arm and removing all the power and imprints in it, Sumu absorbed every bit of divinity and every trace of power in the arm. As the nutrient to break through the demigods, Sumu doesn't know how other demigods devour divinity. To him, you only need to inject the power of erosion into the arm of this true god, wait until the power of erosion has eroded everything in it, and then withdraw the power in it, and then swallow all the power contained in this arm and return it to yourself. In vivo. Soon, when the power of erosion returned, the divinity contained in this arm had been swallowed up by Sumu and merged into his body. And this arm that has not rotted for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. It also turned into ashes at this moment and disappeared with the wind. Divinity. It is the foundation of the sanctuary leading to the demigods. It's hard to explain what kind of substance this is. In other words, divinity is not material at all, but a concept and a quality. When he devoured the arm of the true god and absorbed all the divinity in this arm into his body, 13 small light spots appeared in Mu's body. These 13 little spots of light are the 13 points of divinity contained in the arms of the original true god. Incorporating divinity into one's body is only the first step. Next, Sumu needs to constantly refine these divinities and transform these divinities from being simply embedded in his body to being completely integrated into his body and becoming a part of his body. Divinity refining is not difficult. Any sanctuary or demigod can do it. The only thing needed is time. When incorporating these 13 points of divinity into his body, Sumu also perceives his current physical state with spiritual power, temporarily ignoring the other 12 points of divinity. Sumu focused all his attention on the little bit of divinity in his right hand. The surging 660 abyss demonic energy circulated in the body. When these abyss demonic chi passed through the location of that bit of divinity, a trace of indiscernible abyss demonic chi infiltrated into divinity and was swallowed up by divinity. Subsequently, the divinity, which was originally incompatible with Sumu's body, also added an insignificant degree of fusion at this moment. Use the power of your own source to purify your divinity. Every time you practice, the degree of fusion between your divinity and yourself will increase by 1 point. When this kind of purification reaches the limit, this bit of divinity will be completely integrated with yourself and become a part of your body. Scene. It's a bit slow. Controlling the abyss demonic energy, it is continuously injected into the divinity, refining that bit of divinity. It took several hours before Sumu's refinement of the gods improved by a small amount. At this speed, it really takes a month or two for him to refine a bit of divinity. This is the speed at which he can concentrate his mind on a little divine refining. If at the same time refining the 13 points of divinity incorporated into one's body, the speed will be even slower. The power of erosion is useless. While devouring the divinity, Sumu realized that was all. Free points are also useless. The refinement of the divine nature did not even appear in the place where the dots were added. There are still more than 2 months before the day of conferring the gods set by the Dark Council. According to this refining speed, when the day of conferring gods comes, I'm afraid I can at most refine 2 points of divinity and make myself the lowest demigod. For this speed, Sumu was very dissatisfied. Not asking for a middle-ranked demigod or even an upper-ranked demigod, in Sumu's expectation, before the day of conferring gods comes, he will at least raise his divinity to around 10 o'clock. Now it seems, there is a big gap between ideal and reality. But refining divinity is essentially the process of adapting divinity to its own source power. Other demigods may only be able to refine them a little bit like this. Myself. While maintaining the refining of divinity, Sumu also thought about how to improve the refining speed of divinity in his mind. Subsequently, his mind merged with the abyss world, transformed into the form of the abyss demon god, and then refined the divinity in his body. A dimension demon god, the world is himself, and he is the world. When Sumu incarnates the form of the abyss demon god and uses the power of the origin of the abyss world to refine the divinity, the speed of refining suddenly increased tenfold. Originally, it would take a month or two to refine a bit of divinity. Now, it only takes less than 10 days to refine a bit of divinity. The median demigod still did not dare to hope, but with this refining speed, Sumu could at least finish refining the 13 points of divinity he had obtained before the day of conferring the gods. The power of the source from the abyss world poured into Sumu's body continuously, refining a bit of divinity in it. In the absence of interference from other things, Sumu put all his heart into the refining of divinity. 8 days passed in a flash. When the 8th day was about to end, with the continuous support of the abyss world, Sumu finally completely refined the first bit of divinity, and let this bit of divinity completely integrate into his body and become a part of himself. A little bit of divinity at hand. Sumu's rank has also officially entered the demigod realm from the peak sanctuary. Even the lowest demigod is a demigod. From the peak sanctuary breakthrough to the demigod realm, neither a vision nor a vortex of vitality appeared. The only thing that changed was Sumu himself. After completely refining the first bit of divinity and becoming a part of himself, Sumu finally understood the role of divinity and finally knew where the divine armor of the gods came from. Before refining, divinity is like a light spot embedded in the body, which can be perceived with spiritual power, but is not actually a real substance. After refining, that bit of divinity turned into a small energy vortex and merged into his energy system. The abyss magic energy circulates in the body, AV. Every time it flows through the small energy vortex transformed by this divinity, a part of the abyss demonic energy will be swallowed up by the energy vortex. After purifying the swallowed part of the abyss demonic energy, a smaller amount of abyss demonic energy with higher purity will be spit out by the energy vortex and reincorporated into the energy system in his body. In this way, the energy vortex is constantly purifying the energy in his body, purifying and moving it towards the direction of divine power. This is the energy aspect. In terms of material. In other words, in terms of body, divinity also has a great influence on Sumu. Every time it devours and purifies the abyss, the energy vortex will emit a pure force, blending into the surrounding of its location, slowly increasing the strength of the flesh and bones in this area, making it from ordinary flesh and blood. And bones evolve in the direction of God's body. Because of the powerful four-dimensional attributes and because of his unique skills, Sumu's physical defense far exceeds that of the existence of the same rank. When he was in the peak sanctuary, he had a defense comparable to a half artifact. However, when the energy vortex is purified again and again, the part of the flesh and bones that the energy vortex can affect is still constantly strengthening. The purification of the energy system is to make the power system of a demigod evolve towards divine power. The strengthening of flesh and bones is to make the body of a demigod evolve towards the body of a god. Besides, another function of the divine energy vortex is armor. This kind of armor is not armor in the physical sense, nor is it the kind of rune armor formed by the rune magic circle. It is also a quality, a concept. In simple terms, the energy vortex is a source of radiation, radiating a mysterious force covering part of the flesh and bones. When this part of the flesh and bones is attacked from outside, this mysterious power will greatly weaken the attack on this part of the flesh and bones. This effect is very similar to the divine armor possessed by the gods. A little divinity can only cover a small part of flesh and bones. The more divinity, the more flesh and bone are covered. When a demigod has enough divinity to cover every part of his body, after this mysterious force that can greatly weaken external attacks is linked together and undergoes a qualitative change, it formed the divine armor possessed by the gods. Divine armor. Divinity. It is precisely because the layer of armor possessed by the gods comes from the armor of the gods in their bodies that it is called the armor of the gods. The first point of divine integration, Sumu's attribute panel also changed. But at this time, he didn't have the mind to check his attribute panel. After the first point of divinity was integrated, Sumu found that the speed of refining the second point of divinity increased by a little bit again. Not only that, the more divinities refined, the closer a demigod's body is to that of a deity, and when refining other divinities again, the speed will be faster. When a demigod conferred a god. When the body is transformed into a divine body and the divine nature is connected into divine armor, there is no need to refine other divine natures, and the divine nature can naturally be born in the divine body. It took Sumu a few days to refine the first point of divinity. The next 3 points of divine refining took about the same amount of time. When it comes to refining the 4th, 5th, and 6th points of divinity, the time he consumes is significantly reduced. The further back you go, the less time it takes for refining. With the help of the source power from the abyss world, when Sumu refines these 13 points of divinity, completely integrates into his body and becomes a part of his own power. There are still more than 10 days before the day when the darkness is conferred. And this time, Sumu picked up the death scythe. The divinity at 13 o'clock stabilized him on the level of a lower demigod. After taking out the experience that had been stored on the skill transfer panel for a long time, Sumu's level also reached level 91. Such a level is also a rank, and it is still the weakest group among the demigods, but it has made Sumu's combat power a leap forward. At the same time, the realm of the lower demigods also gave Sumu enough confidence to refine the death scythe, making this ancient artifact a weapon for him to fight against the gods. For a long time, Sumu's weapon has been the skeleton sword that was condensed from the essence of his own bones when he was transferred from a fragile little skeleton to a skeleton soldier. With the improvement of his 4-dimensional attributes, the quality of the skeleton sword has also been changing. From the very beginning equivalent to ordinary steel weapons, to bronze equipment, silver equipment, gold equipment, dark gold equipment, and finally to holy artifacts, and now the quality of semi-artifacts. At this advanced speed, when Sumu is successfully conferred a god, the bone sword will also be advanced, for the quality of the artifact. Only, the artifacts of today are very different from the ancient artifacts of the last era. Purely in terms of quality, the artifacts possessed by the gods may be no less than ancient artifacts. But in terms of power, the artifacts possessed by the gods are far inferior to the ancient artifacts. The divine weapon forged by the gods is only a piece of equipment after all, in order to better display the combat power of a god. And the ancient artifact, not just a piece of equipment, but also a part of the power of the ancient gods. It is part of the authority of the ancient gods. Its power, far beyond the ordinary artifact. Abyss Hall. On the throne, holding the death scythe in his hand, Sumu poured the erosive power formed by the erosion talent into it continuously, erasing all the remaining power and marks on this ancient artifact, leaving only the original power of this ancient artifact. At the same time. In this way, he also left his own mark on this ancient artifact. The death scythe must be a foreign object, a dead object. Even if its power is infinite, refining such an ancient artifact is much faster than refining divinity. When incarnating in the form of the abyss demon god and refining the death scythe with the help of the constant source power of the abyss world. In just 5 days, Sumu put his own mark on the sickle, making this ancient artifact a weapon exclusively for him. By this time, his refining of the death scythe can be said to be over. At this time, he was already enough to exert a part of the power of the death god scythe. Even in the demigod realm, he was enough to activate the death scythe, tear open the divine armor of a god, and hurt a god. But Sumu was not satisfied. After the death god's scythe was completely refined, the skeleton blade, which was condensed from the essence of his own bones, appeared in his hand. Holding the death scythe in one hand and the skeleton knife in the other. After taking a deep breath, with a solemn expression, Sumu directly put the 2 weapons together and began to forcibly fuse. Integrate the death scythe and the skeleton sword into one. Integrate this infinitely powerful ancient artifact into your body and become a part of your body like the skeleton sword. Originally, this process was impossible. The skeleton sword is only a semi-artifact quality, but the death sickle is an ancient artifact. But Sumu has finished refining the death scythe. The skeleton blade is formed by the condensed part of his body. When using one's own will as attraction, when using one's own energy as a catalyst, when using the world origin of the abyss world as a melting pot, this fusion becomes possible. All the attention is devoted to the fusion of the two weapons. When the abyss demonic energy in my body is pouring in, when the origin of the world from the abyss world is burning up. At this moment, the death side and the skeleton Mordor are blurred at the same time. These two weapons of different quality and power seem to overlap. The materials that make up the two weapons are merging with each other, and the power contained in these two artifacts is also merging with each other. 1 hour, 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours. After 2 full days have passed, the Death God's scythe and the skeleton sword have completely merged. At this time, there is no death scythe in Sumu's hand, and there is no skeleton sword. Instead, it is a jet black mirror knife that is equal to him. The body of the sword is like it is condensed from the essence of black bones. The blade of the sword shone with a sharp cold light. Without prompting, there is an aura of death and silence that constantly radiates. Fusion is complete. This black scythe, which combines the death scythe and the skeletal sword, has officially become a part of Sumu's body. It retains the characteristics of the skeleton sword, which can be integrated into Sumu's body at any time and can be repaired at any time by the skeleton essence in his body. It also retains the characteristics of the death scythe, which has a more gorgeous shape than the death scythe, and is completely the power of the Reaper's scythe is preserved. Not only that, an ancient artifact. In order to fully exert the full power of this ancient artifact, at least Sumu's rank must break through the upper limit of the demigod realm, and it is only possible after he is successfully conferred a god. Original. When fully refined, Sumu can probably exert a quarter of the power of the Reaper's scythe. Just this quarter of power was enough to tear apart a god's divine armor and injure a god. After the Reaper's scythe and the skeleton sword are fused, the newly born Reaper's scythe is enough to allow Sumu to exert 1/3 of its power. Just this. Let Sumu's attack power limit greatly increase. The refining and fusion of Reaper's scythe has ended. He was in no hurry to leave. Sumu opened his own properties panel. As his rank has finally entered the demigod realm from the peak of the sanctuary, a series of skills he possesses can finally evolve from the level of the original skills to the subdivine skills. For nearly a year, the countless intelligent creatures in the abyss world who have been transformed into abyss species have provided Sumu with millions of faith powers. After converting these millions of faith powers into freedom points, Sumu can also upgrade his skill level with free points. The boundary is the boundary. Skill is skill. When the realm is raised to the demigod realm, and the skills he possesses are also raised to the subgod level corresponding to the demigod, Sumu can be regarded as a complete step into the demigod level. Ice Age, Scourge, Death Cut, Phase Shift, and more. All of these skills can be improved. Only, the first skills Sumu needs to improve are not these main battle skills, but the natural disaster bone god of war. There are still 8 days before the day of the dark conferred god set by the Dark Council. During the last 8 days, the first thing Sumu wanted to improve was the skill that could maximize his combat power, so that you can deal with all kinds of accidents when you visit the scene of function in person. Among all the skills he possesses, the one that can enhance his combat power to the greatest extent is undoubtedly the Bone God of War. As a combined skill, when Sumu was still in the sanctuary, Scourgebone War God was able to reach the skill level of the subgod. Now, he is already a demigod. If this skill is evolved again, I am afraid that it is not impossible to upgrade it from the level of the subgod to the level of the true god. 0. Ask for flowers. 1.5 million points. This is the total number of free points that Sumu has after harvesting the power of belief in himself from the countless intelligent beings in the abyss world, plus the free points he originally had. Without hesitation, after opening his attribute panel, Sumu directly started to raise the level of Scourge, Bone God of War, in units of 100,000. 100,000 points. 200,000 points. 300,000 points. 400,000 points. When a full 900,000 free points were put into the skill level of Scourge, Bone God of War, had already reached the full level. At this time, the form of the skeleton God of War brought about by the release of the skill is already comparable to a complete demigod. Last step. With the experience of evolving skills again and again, Sumu directly invested 500,000 free points into the skill and let this skill complete the last transformation. Then, black gold lights flickered on the skill bar. When the final evolution is completed, the natural disaster skeletal war god disappears and is replaced by a skill with basically the same function, but a more powerful skill. Mythical. 0. Endless Bone God of War. Looking at the first mythical skill born on his attribute panel, Sumu quietly felt the information that emerged in his mind. The same is the Skeleton God of War. As a mythical skill, Endless Bone War God has many fewer restrictions than Scourge Bone War God, which is a subdivine skill. First, it is no longer based on the skill Cast Disaster as a prerequisite skill. As long as the skill is activated, the endless skeletal essence will pour out from the worlds and directly attach to Sumu's body. Without the step of summoning, Sumu can enter the form of a skeleton god of war in a single thought. In addition, endless means there is no upper limit. Just like the two super boss skills of Ice Age and Natural Disaster, if Sumu has enough time to condense enough bone essence, the mythical bone god of war has no upper limit. Once activated, Sumu can have the combat power of a true god. If it takes a whole day or even longer to devour and absorb the skeleton essence from that world, Sumu, who is in the state of the skeleton god of war, may be able to obtain comparable results to the lower, middle, and even higher gods. Terrorist force. Of course, when entering the battlefield, no one would set aside such a long time for him to improve himself. Skeleton God of War. And it is the mythical skill Skeleton God of War. After completing the evolution of the skill and reaching the end of the skill, Sumu stepped out and appeared in the sky above the Abyss Hall. Subsequently, he activated the mythical skill, Endless Bone War God. Time required. Endless skeletal essences from various worlds poured out of the void and directly attached to Sumu's body. In an instant, a terrifying bone demon god was born again in the Abyss world. 100 meters. km. Thousands of feet. Lofty. In a very short period of time, a white-boned devil with a height of 10,000 feet appeared on the spot. This huge figure is not much smaller than the 10,000 Zhang Devil Mountain under his feet. Sumu even feels. Even outside the Abyss world. In this new form of skeleton god of war, his combat power is no less than the form of the Abyss demon god in the Abyss world. Above the sky, 10,000 feet of demon body stands out of thin air. Constantly exudes an aura of destruction. Gods. It is an existence on the same level as the world. Its existence alone will bring a huge burden to the world. Therefore, when a god enters the interior of the world, it will lead to the instinctive counterattack of the world. Sumu is naturally not a true god. But, after appearing in the form of a mythical skeletal god of war, there is not much difference between him and the true god at this time. The skeleton god of war can expand to a height of 10,000 zhang, and the smallest can shrink to about 10 meters. At this time, standing tall in the sky with a 10,000 zhang demon body, the skeleton god of war not only exudes a terrifying aura, but also a layer of brilliance that is difficult to detect with the naked eye circulates on the huge demon body. Divine Armor. Divine Armor is the basic ability of a god. With only 13 points of divinity, Sumu naturally cannot derive the ability of Divine Armor. However, after appearing in the form of the Bone War God, the mythical skill of Endless Bone War God forcibly attached a layer of divine armor to Sumu. Although this layer of divine armor is not as strong as the divine armor of the real god, 6660, it also has the ability of divine armor to suppress and weaken attacks under the true god. Is a demigod. It is extremely difficult to tear apart this divine armor and hurt Sumu in it. Thousands of demons. Divine armor. After feeling his current state, Mu stretched out his hand and squeezed it lightly suddenly. The scythe of the god of death, which had long been integrated with him, also appeared at this moment, and it also turned into a huge size and was held by him. In hand, ancient artifact. Death scythe. When the ancient artifact is completely refined, Sumu can probably exert a quarter of the power of the ancient artifact. When the ancient artifact is fused with the bone sword, Sumu can probably unleash 1/3 of the power of this ancient artifact. And now, holding the Reaper's scythe in the form of a skeleton warrior, Sumu felt that he could at least unleash 2/3 of the power of this ancient artifact. Soul hook. Slay the soul. Destroy the body. At this time, Sumu felt that he gently waved the mirror of death, and he could easily tear open the world barrier of the abyss world and destroy this dimensional world that had reached the small world, level 5. At this time, he mobilized the power of Death God Scythe, and he could also easily break through the divine armor of a god, tear up its divine body, cut off its divine soul. Mythic skill plus ancient artifact. The combination of the two makes Sumu, whose main body remains at the level of the lower demigod, even outside the abyss world, has the terrifying power to confront the true god head-on and even shake the true god. In this way, he will only participate in the dark conferred god in a few days. In this way, only he is qualified to intervene in the catastrophe where the gods wake up a year later and destroy the real world. The devil. True god. In the sky. Feeling the powerful power he has now, Sumu couldn't help but let out a breath and muttered to himself. From the time of rebirth to the present, it has been exactly 9 years. In 9 years, he has experienced countless wars and survived countless crises. Stun has grown from a fragile little skeleton that even ordinary people can easily kill to the height it is today. Inside, he is the Abyss Demon God and the ruler of the Abyss world. Outside, he is a low-ranking demigod, but he has combat power comparable to that of a true god. So powerful. Even in this incomparably vast game world with many gods, he can be called a hegemon and occupy a place. As long as the specific coordinates of the Abyss world are not exposed. Even in the face of the most powerful gods, he has the power to protect himself. Relying on his erosion, talent and his own efforts, in just 9 years, Sumu completed this transformation and completed the sublimation that other existences need thousands or even tens of thousands of years to complete. God of Darkness. The gods awake. What? In the face of these two upcoming challenges, Sumu's heart is not only without the slightest fear, but full of fighting spirit. God of Darkness is just a prelude. The awakening of the gods is the beginning of troubled times. The so-called troubled times make heroes. The same is true for the high-level existences of gods and demons. The world of war. In such a chaotic and cruel era, a true god will fall if he is not careful. Similarly, in such an era of war between gods and gods, it is also full of infinite opportunities. For example, in the era of peace, a sanctuary wants to be promoted to a demigod, and a lower demigod wants to be promoted to a middle demigod. The divinity they need is either the same as Sumu, go to the ancient battlefield to explore, or hunt other demigods. God. But the ancient battlefield has been explored countless times, and not only is there a lot of dangers, but the chances of finding items containing divinity in it are also pitiful. And hunting demigods. In addition to being confident enough in his own strength, a demigod who also has enough cards, who would run out of his hiding place with nothing to spare. How to hunt and kill a demigod without even appearing his true body, a demigod, plundering its divinity. The world of war is different. God war broke out. The worlds are in chaos. It is not only the planes and worlds that start the war, but also the gods and the demigods under the gods. Every battle of the gods represents the withering of countless lives. Among these beings, there are many existences at the level of demigods and even true gods. In such a battle between the gods and gods, as long as one is lucky enough, it is possible for a sanctuary to obtain the corpse of a demigod, the artifact of a true god, and even the deity of a true god. Danger and opportunity coexist. Nothing is impossible. This is the world of war. The world of war. After getting acquainted with his current strength and state, Sumu smiled slightly, released the form of the skeleton god of war, and returned to his throne in the Abyss Hall. Next is to wait. Waiting for the arrival of the dark day of conferring gods, and waiting for the prelude to the world of great contention to open. More than 2 months. Not only did Sumu fuse the 13 points of divinity, allowing himself to enter the demigod realm from the peak of the sanctuary, but the many abyss lords under his command also fused at least 1 point of divinity and entered the demigod realm. Just 1 point of integration of divinity is enough for a peak sanctuary to enter the demigod realm. It's just this one divinity difference. Let there be an impenetrable chasm between the sanctuary and the demigods. From sanctuary to demigod 0. The power of the many abyss lords under Sumu increased dramatically, even if it can't be compared with the existence outside the specification like Sumu. Compared with the ordinary lower demigods, the strength and potential of these abyss lords are not bad at all. Of course, the most important thing is the Crow of Death, Olivia. As mentioned earlier, the more gods one has, the closer they are to the god, the faster they refine other gods. Original. Olivia is a high-ranking demigod who has reached level 99 and has 90 points of divinity. With the permission granted by Sumu and the massive experience points harvested from the players, Olivia's level has successfully reached the full level of 100. Divine aspect. After swallowing up part of the divinity in the head of the true god, Olivia's number of divinities also reached 98 points. There are only 2 points left to reach 100 points. At that time, she reached the level of a perfect demigod, formed her own divine armor, and plotted to confer a god. And, after obtaining the Godhead of Doom and incorporating the Godhead of Doom into her body, Olivia's chance of being conferred a god far exceeds that of other demigods. Only, because of the order from Sumu, during the consecration ceremony, she had to condense her godhead with the 3 priesthoods of bad luck, greed, and raven, so Olivia had to slow down her refinement. The speed of sex. Strive to achieve the perfect demigod state. At the same time, let your understanding of these 3 priesthoods reach a level that is enough to condense the godhead. In the progression of Sumu. In the advancement of the many abyss lords under his command. The last few days passed. There is only the last day until the day of the dark conferred god set by the Dark Council. At this time, Sumu is still sitting on his throne in the Abyss Hall. Olivia and other abyss lords who have completed the advanced steps also gathered in this hall again. God of Darkness, Sumu is going to participate. This is not only a meaningful ceremony of conferring gods, but also a prelude to a world of great competition. 5.5. Can be expected. Just because of this dark conferring god, a high-intensity war will break out. At the same time, a lot of opportunities will be born. Under Sumu, there is only one step away from the consummation of demigods, and Olivia, who should also prepare for the consecration of the gods, will naturally go with Sumu to participate in the consecration of gods in darkness and observe the ceremony of conferring gods. Other pit lords. They who have just advanced to demigods are obviously not suitable to participate in this kind of war that is bound to break out with the highest intensity in the demigod level. But what? As long as Sumu was at the scene, he naturally had a way to project everything that happened on the scene of the consecration ceremony in the Abyss Hall, so that they could feel the difference between the peak demigods and even the consummation demigods without going to the scene. Fighting. Subsequently, when the Abyss Lords have gathered in the Abyss Hall, when Olivia is ready, Sumu swiped his finger and a space crack leading to the plane of death appeared in the Abyss Hall. Step out. Sumu took Olivia to cross the space gap and reach the plane of death from the Abyss world. Here. Plane of death. It is the land of the gods of the fire of wisdom. 1033 shakes the big thousand. The ceremony of conferring gods of the Dark Camp. Since they entered with the help of the spatial coordinates contained in the invitation letter, this time they entered the plane of death, and the place where Sumu and Olivia appeared was still the rested floating island. This is where Sumu appeared the last time he entered the plane of death. The same as last time. When the figures of Sumu and Olivia appeared, one of the many soulfire undead living on the floating island jumped out and turned into a dark fire. We welcome the arrival of the two speakers and watch the ceremony of my lord's consecration. My lord's consecration ceremony is still carried out at the bottom of the plane of death, guarded by the first speaker. The ceremony of conferring the gods is of great importance. Anyone who rashly steps into the bottom layer of the plane of death will be bombarded and killed indiscriminately by the first speaker. So, please pay attention to the two speakers. But the two speakers are the existences that my lord personally invited to come to watch the ceremony of consecration. After Gloomy Fire finished these words respectfully, Sumu nodded, and the two followed behind Gloomy Fire towards the so-called viewing place prepared by Wisdom Fire. Place to watch. Above the bottommost continent. When Sumu and Olivia arrived, two stone chairs had already been prepared on a floating island. In front of the two stone chairs, there is a stone table. On the stone table, a variety of wines and fruits from all over the world are prepared. Of course, this is just the occasion. What Sumu and Olivia watched from 01 was the consecration ceremony of the Fire of Wisdom. When a dark demigod is about to be consecrated, it will inevitably lead to the obstruction of the light camp. Stepping into the plane of death is like stepping into a battlefield. Under such circumstances, no demigod would be in the mood to drink or enjoy food. Soon, after Sumu and Olivia took their seats, the shadow of the dark fire disappeared. On the stone table before them, a blue-purple soul fire suddenly burned. On this burning soul fire, an old face can be clearly seen. The Fire of Wisdom appears. After Sumu and Olivia were seated, the Fire of Wisdom appeared in front of Sumu and Olivia in the form of energy incarnation. Thank you, Lord Raven and Lord Abyss, for coming. At the same time, congratulations to Your Excellency Abyss's great achievements in the exploration of the ancient battlefield and successfully advanced to the demigod. Sumu and Olivia joined forces to explore the ancient battlefield, which was led by the Fire of Wisdom. Only, what he did not expect was that the exploration of the ancient battlefield by the two speakers was not only fruitful, but there was no conflict between the two speakers. Instead, they appeared together and came to his god-conferred land. This kind of result, but the Fire of Wisdom never expected. Just a fluke. Sumu smiled slightly and didn't say much. Again, congratulations to Your Excellency the Abyss. To Sumu politely, the face of the Fire of Wisdom turned to Olivia, and the old face that emerged from the Fire of the Soul clearly showed a complex expression. I didn't expect, Your Excellency the fifth speaker will not participate in this dark conferring god. I didn't expect. Your Excellency the fifth speaker will make such a decision. As an existence about to be conferred a god, the level and realm of the Fire of Wisdom must have reached the level of a perfect demigod. From his eyes, he could naturally see that Olivia was only one step away from becoming a consummate demigod. At the same time, the three different priestly auras of bad luck, greed, and raven surround his body, which also makes the Fire of Wisdom secretly startled. Function. Generally speaking, when every consummate demigod conspired to confer a god, he used a kind of priesthood as the basis for his consecration to condense the godhead. But there are so many gods with various vocations that exist today. It is also after successfully consecrating a god with one kind of priesthood, and then expanding his own priesthood in various ways, and finally allowing himself to have multiple priesthoods. Without him, to confer a god with one vocation and a variety of vocations, the danger contained in it will skyrocket. The biggest risk is that the process of conferring gods will be greatly prolonged, allowing more time to attack demigods and even true gods, but conferring gods will fail. Obviously. Olivia, surrounded by the atmosphere of the three priesthoods, is not only not going to hold the consecration ceremony on this dark goddess day, but also prepares to use these three priesthoods as the basis to condense her own godhead. This kind of courage is not comparable to ordinary demigods. Postponing the consecration ceremony conferred the gods with the three priesthoods. Plus Olivia and Sumu came together. When these information gathered, the fire of wisdom guessed something faintly. So, did Your Excellency the fifth speaker get the protection of Your Excellency Abyss? In this way, the old man would like to congratulate His Excellency the fifth speaker in advance on his successful consecration. When he said these words, the fire of wisdom was indeed somewhat envious. The gods have not awakened. If Olivia held the consecration ceremony within a year, the obstacle she encountered must come from the demigods. As long as she places the place where she holds the ceremony of conferring the gods in the abyss world, it can block almost any foreign danger. In this way, as long as Olivia has a sufficient understanding of the three priesthoods she has chosen and successfully condenses her own godhead, there is almost no possibility that the gods will fail. This nearly 100% chance of successfully consecrating a god is not only envied by the fire of wisdom. I am afraid that every demigod who conspires to consecrate a god will be envious. Only, this is an example. Not to mention that Sumu would not shelter the fire of wisdom. Even if Sumu promised to shelter the fire of wisdom, he would not dare to promise to confer the fire of wisdom in his own dimension world. In his own dimensional world, a dimensional demon god can suppress even a true god. The fire of wisdom hastily entered Sumu's abyss world, is equivalent to tying himself up and sending it to Sumu's chopping board to let it go. Who dares to take such a risk? No wonder Olivia did not participate in this dark conferring god. No wonder Olivia dared to condense the godhead based on the three priesthoods. Only, he couldn't envy this kind of protection. Olivia also didn't say much, just smiled. Neither Sumu nor Olivia had any intention of revealing their relationship. Although even if the relationship between the two is exposed, it will not affect anything, but if you can hide it, try to hide it as much as possible. This is also a kind of trump card. Subsequently, after meeting with Sumu and Olivia, the energy incarnation of the fire of wisdom dissipated. This deeply hidden consummation demigod also continued to prepare for his consecration ceremony. Sumu and Olivia waited quietly in place. As the land of the gods of the fire of wisdom, the plane of death has been blocked. Bottom continent. It is the most important part of the blockade. The huge body of the mountain giant, which is several thousand feet tall, stands beside the bottom continent, ready to kill anyone who dares to invade the plane of death or even the bottom continent. At this time, the entire bottom continent was blocked and obscured by a thick fog. Even Sumu, on the premise of not showing his own cards, it is difficult to see through the fog and see the appearance of the bottom continent under the cover of the fog. God of Darkness. This is a proposal made by the Dark Council. Disperse the blows from the bright camp by means of collective conferring gods and increase the chance of success in conferring gods. The plane of death where Sumu and Olivia are located is just one of the gods. In other planes, in other worlds, there must be other dark demigods conspiring to seal the gods. Don't dare to say anything else. The other consummate demigods in the Dark Council, excluding Olivia, must be preparing for this process. Because if they miss this time, they will almost have no chance of successfully consecrating gods. This is the last chance. Only, no one dared to come forward, the first to start the ceremony of conferring gods. The dark camp is preparing, and the light camp is definitely preparing to obstruct the ceremony of conferring gods at any time. The first dark demigod to initiate the ceremony of conferring gods is destined to be the first target of the light camp. Under these circumstances, who dares to take risks? But these have nothing to do with Sumu and Olivia. They are just witnesses to this consecration ceremony. Even if the light camp strikes and perceives the dark aura on them, and even they are included in the attack target together, they are not the main target. 663 witnesses. Observe. Learning experience. By the way, let's understand the strength of the Bright Camp. This is the purpose of Sumu bringing Olivia to observe the ceremony. Of course. By the way, it would be better to snatch a group of divine corpses or artifacts that contain divinity. Time flies. Slowly. The fog covering the bottom plane is getting thicker and thicker, and the number of free undead and soul fire in the death plane is also getting smaller and smaller. Slowly. The day of darkness conferred God has come, and it is moving towards the end of this day without any rush. The fire of wisdom awaits. Other demigods are also waiting. All the dark demigods who participated in this dark conferring God are waiting. As long as a demigod takes the lead in conferring gods, it will be activated by the Light Camp, and once the demigod attracts the attention of the Light Camp, other demigods will also start the ceremony of conferring gods at the first time. Who would want to be this early bird? If this day is over, there is still no demigod to open the dark camp of function, it will become a complete joke. Missing today, the demigods of the dark camp are also equivalent to missing the last chance to confer the gods. Missing today, with today's performance, I am afraid that no one will be able to gather many dark demigods into one day. Collectively conferred gods and separate conferred gods is undoubtedly an opportunity for the Light Camp to defeat each. The chance of successfully consecrating a god is so small that it can be ignored. Every demigod is waiting. Every demigod was restless. Just an hour before the end of the day of the dark conferring of gods, just when all the demigods who were preparing to start this ceremony of conferring gods on this day felt that this collective conferring of gods was doomed to fail. Plain of Death. Floating Island. Sumu, who had been closing his eyes for a while, suddenly opened his eyes. It was him who came out first. The consecration begins. Shake 1,000. In the last hour, finally a speaker couldn't help but started the ceremony of conferring the gods. Function. It is bound to cause the law to vibrate. Even when Sumu became an abyss demon god, various celestial phenomena appeared in all planes and worlds, especially when a consummate demigod became a god. This does not mean that the demon god is inferior to the true god. It is because the dimension demon god becomes the demon god, and its power is limited to his own dimension world, so other planes and worlds only have celestial phenomena and have no other influence. Function is different. For the existence of a true god, the priesthood it masters affects each plane and each world. So, when a consummate demigod initiates the consecration ceremony, the laws and rules of every plane and every world will respond. This also led to, even if the land of conferred gods chosen by a consummate demigod is remote, it can at most prolong the time for the enemy to reach the land of conferred gods, and it is impossible to hide his position of conferred gods at all. The consecration begins. Shake thousands. When the remaining laws and rules in the plane of death began to vibrate, when the voice of the first perfect demigod who opened the ceremony of conferring gods also spread throughout the world with the vibration of these laws and rules. Sumu identified him. The third speaker, the evil angel. The first to be impatient, the first to initiate the ceremony of conferring the gods, the first to expose the land of conferred gods and become the first target of the Light Camp sniper. It is the third speaker of the Dark Council, the special undead resurrected from the ancient angel's corpse, the evil angel. The consecration ceremony has begun. The location of the evil angel has also been exposed. Even if he didn't go to the land of conferred gods by the evil angels, Sumu could imagine that the land of conferred gods by the third speaker had probably already started a war between demigods. Sumu didn't know how much preparation the angel had made for this consecration ceremony. I don't know if the third speaker has invited friends, how many friends he has invited, and how many he has prepared to fight against the Bright Camp, delaying the time for his consecration ceremony. He just knows. The first sniper who can beat the Bright Camp and the third speaker will have a great chance of being conferred a god. If you can't stand the sniper of the Bright Camp, there are only two possibilities for waiting for the angel. Or, function failed. The power of belief and divine power that had been accumulated in the past had been consumed, and the angelic evil itself had also fled from the land of conferred gods after the failure of conferring gods and a significant decline in strength. Or, directly fall. The land of the gods of the evil angels has been exposed. If Sumu wanted to, he still had time to rush. But, compared with the consecration ceremony of evil angels, Sumu would like to see the progress of the consecration ceremony of the fire of wisdom. After all, in his perception, the evil angel is a consummation demigod. And the fire of wisdom. Even if he has stepped into the realm of demigods, if he does not use the form of the skeleton god of war or the form of the abyss devil, Mu still can't see the depth of the fire of wisdom. No matter how he perceives it, the fire of wisdom gives him the feeling of an ordinary demigod. 19. How can such a demigod who can't even see through Sumu be an ordinary demigod? Ordinary demigods do not have the qualifications or strength to hold the ceremony of conferring gods. Still calmly staying in place, Sumu's eyes shone brightly, staring at the bottom continent that was blocked and obscured by the heavy fog ahead, waiting for the opening ceremony of the consecration ceremony of the fire of wisdom. The ceremony of consecrating the gods of the evil angel is like a signal. Just 10 minutes after the evil angel opened the consecration, the second dark demigod who conspired to consecrate the gods started his own consecration ceremony. This demigod is not a member of the Dark Council. And this second dark demigod consecration ceremony is more like another signal. Just after the second dark demigod opened the shock of the laws and rules brought by the ceremony of conferring the gods, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth dark demigod also opened his own conferred god ceremony. 10 minutes. It is enough for the bright camp, which has been prepared, to rush to the land of the gods of the evil angels and launch a sniper against this early bird. And after these 10 minutes, the collective began to consecrate the gods. Even if the places where these dark demigods conferred gods are exposed and are known to the light camp, they can disperse the strength of the light camp to the greatest extent, reduce the intensity of sniping and battles they encounter to the greatest extent, and increase the possibility of their own gods. A time. Because the dark demigods opened the ceremony of conferring gods, the vibrations of the laws and rules came frequently. In just 1 minute from the 10th minute to the 11th minute, there were more than 10 dark demigods who started their own god consecration ceremony. Of the dozen or so dark demigods, most of them were existences that Sumu had never heard of or had ever come into contact with. But there are also some who Sumu has had contact with, like Dark Titan, such as the King of Blood. Among the top 5 speakers of the Dark Council, except for the mountain giants who guarded the fire of wisdom on the plane of death and escorted the ceremony of consecration of the fire of wisdom, except for Olivia, the crow of death, because of Sumu's order, abandoned this dark conferring god. The remaining 3 speakers qualified to confer gods all started their own god conferring ceremony. When every dark demigod opens the ceremony of conferring gods, the laws and rules of every facet and world will be shaken. Every dark demigod conferring gods will reveal their position. Every dark demigod declares, will attract the attention of many demigods who have not yet reached the qualifications for conferring gods. During this process, Sumu paid special attention to the 3 demigods who belonged to the Dark Council. To his surprise, the land of the gods of the evil angel and the King of Blood is far away from the plane of death, and it is located in a very remote place even in the Void Ocean, the land of the gods of the Dark Titan. Far from being in a remote place or a broken world, it's not far from the plane of death. At least, after learning the location of the Dark Titan's conferred god's land, he could cross many worlds and planes in a few breaths and appear near the second speaker's conferred god's land. Under the circumstance that the land of conferred gods chosen by other dark demigods can be as far away as it can be, the Dark Titans know that the fire of wisdom uses the plane of death as their conferred god land. In this case, choose to confer gods near here. Undoubtedly unwise. But this has nothing to do with Sumu. Even if the Dark Titan and the Fire of Wisdom chose to open the conferred god in the same place and chose to face the sniping from the light camp together, that was their own choice. Sumu and Olivia are just a witness, a passerby. Time flies. When half an hour had passed since the evil angel started the ceremony of conferring the gods, there were already more than 20 dark demigods who started their own ceremony of conferring gods and joined the ranks. The further back you go, the fewer dark demigods start the ceremony of conferring gods. These more than 20 dark demigods are almost all the existences of the entire dark camp that have reached the level of consummation demigods. The opening time of the conferred god ceremony is not the later the better. The first shaped angel to initiate the ceremony of conferring the gods will of course be the primary target of the light camp, and the demigods who start the ceremony of conferring gods later are also easy to be targeted by the light camp. After all, the ceremony of conferring the gods lasted that long. Success is success, failure is failure. Half an hour after the angel started the ceremony of conferring the gods, he would start the ceremony of conferring gods. On the contrary, it would be easy to be interfered by the light camp at the most critical moment of conferring gods, resulting in the failure of his conferring gods. On the contrary, it is the best choice to open function in the 10 minutes to 11 minutes. Half an hour passed. All the dark demigods who conspire to confer gods have basically started their own god-conferring rituals. What hasn't been turned on is not delaying time, but retreating at this last moment. In the face of conferred god plus fall and retreat plus survival, they chose the latter. Sum of nature does not include the Fire of Wisdom. Sumu believes that the Fire of Wisdom has not started its own ceremony of consecration until now, and it is by no means shrinking from the blow of the bright camp that will come at any time. It is. What other deep meaning is hidden? Slowly, time transitioned from half an hour to 40 minutes. Just when Sumu was about to take advantage of the Fire of Wisdom before the ceremony of consecrating the gods, he ran to the place of conferring gods of the Dark Titan to take a look. The laws and rules of the plane of death shook again. This kind of shock is not the shock of the demigod opening the ceremony of conferring the gods. Rather, the shock caused by the failure of the consecration ceremony. The first dark demigod to confer a god failed. The failure of conferred gods does not mean absolute fall. But in the case of the failure of the conferred gods and the sharp decline in strength, the possibility of falling down is extremely high after being attacked and chased by the bright camp. Heart shakes. After the law vibration caused by the failure of the first dark demigod to confer a god appeared, Sumu hurriedly sensed the breath that accompanied the law vibration. A strange demigod. It's not just the gods that fail. When he sensed the breath that accompanied the vibration of the law, Wang Hao, and when he felt that the breath was rapidly weakening until it was completely cut off, he was almost certain that this demigod had fallen. A complete demigod. Every demigod who is qualified to unlock the consummation of gods is an existence that is only one step away from the realm of true gods. But this step is like a moat. One step to heaven, one step to hell. Just this one step away, a consummate demigod who needs thousands or even tens of thousands of years to grow up has fallen. Gone forever. If we assume the evil angel's initiation of the ceremony of conferring gods is a signal of the collective consecration of the dark demigods, the fall of this dark demigod is a signal of the collective fall of the dark demigods. After the fall of the first dark demigod, in just a few minutes, another number of demigods failed to confer gods. And Ling. Except for one demigod who successfully escaped the subsequent interception and pursuit of the light camp, all the other demigods have fallen. There is no true god in the dark camp. This state has persisted for tens of thousands of years. For tens of thousands of years, the light camp has continued to grow, while the dark camp has been sluggish. After tens of thousands of years, even if the gods are still sleeping, the forces of light from the camp of light and from the gods. It is far from what the dark camp can compare to. A time. Even Olivia fell silent. Sumu, Olivia, and these two demigods were not the only demigods who came to the plane of death to witness the ceremony of consecration by the Fire of Wisdom. Speakers ranked 6th to 12th did not reach the realm of consummate demigods and were not qualified to initiate the ceremony of conferring gods on the day of dark conferring gods. They were also invited by the Fire of Wisdom to watch his consecration ceremony. Unlike Sumu and Olivia, these demigods came to watch the consecration ceremony in their avatars rather than their bodies. After all, everyone knows that the ceremony of conferring the gods of the dark demigods will attract the sniping of the light camp. It is normal to come in the form of energy incarnations. On the contrary, it is the demigods Sumu and Olivia who come in their own bodies. Irregular. Apotheosis failed. Demigods fall. Although most of the dark demigods already knew when the meeting of the Dark Council was held, the result of this dark conferring god would be tragic. It was precisely because the dark conferring god had a tragic result that they would share the sniping from the light camp in the way of collective conferring gods and increase the possibility of success in conferring gods in darkness. However, when one truly perceives that the demigods of darkness have failed, fallen, or fled, these dark demigods as witnesses are still full of depression and fear. Especially when Angel and Dark Titan, the two powerful demigods in the 663 Dark Councils, second only to the Mountain Giant, failed to consecrate the gods. All the dark demigods on the sidelines almost fell into despair. Sumu joined the Dark Council too late and never saw the Dark Titan and Evil Angel take action. And those demigods who have survived for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, and have already joined the Dark Council, have seen the Dark Titans and Evil Angels take action more than once. Except for the Mountain Giants. Dark Titans and Evil Angels are the most powerful beings in the Dark Council. Even in the face of demigods who are also at the level of perfect demigods, the power of these two speakers is beyond imagination. They can almost kill the sanctuary with the attitude of demigods, to destroy the beheading and the perfect demigods. They are in the same rank. But such powerful dark titans and evil angels, their consecration ceremony also failed. The law shakes. Regular shaking. When it was perceived that both the dark titan and the evil angel had failed, a shadow shrouded the entire dark camp. Conferred God is the only way out for the dark camp. But when the two most powerful dark demigods failed to consecrate the gods, the only way out seemed to have become a dead end. Silence. Dead silence. Despair. For a time, the entire plane of death, all the dark demigods who came to watch, fell into silence. Scene. The dark camp should hide in the darkness and survive secretly. Intend to consecrate gods. Is it just wishful thinking to have bright intentions and rivalry with the camp? Time flies. When 50 minutes have passed since the evil angel started the ceremony of conferring the gods, when there are only the last 10 minutes left on the day of the dark conferring gods agreed by the Dark Council. Plane of death. On the bottom continent, the layer of black mist that blocked everything and covered everything gradually faded away. The situation of the bottom continent finally emerged in the vision of Sumu and many other demigods. At this time, the bluish-purple soul fire that represented the body of the Fire of Wisdom was still blazing on the altar in the center of the bottom continent, which was also the center of the Dark Council meeting place. Only, it turned out to be just a soul fire the size of a water tank, and it has expanded to a size of hundreds of meters. Around the altar, the many stone chairs have been removed. From the altar at the lowest point of the venue, the countless stone chairs were also removed. At this time, after removing all the stone chairs and unnecessary buildings, this huge venue is a huge stone basin covering an area of thousands of kilometers. On the steps, there were people who were not burning with soul fire. These dolls. It's all soul fire. They are all soul fire undead like dark fire. Soul fire is just the initial form of this undead race. To be able to evolve from a soul fire form to a humanoid state is at least the existence of an epic rank, or even a legendary rank. Look around. In this huge basin, there are tens of thousands of humanoid soul fires that have reached the epic and legendary ranks. There are hundreds of humanoid soul fires that have reached the sanctuary level. Around the altar, there are also 10 humanoid soul fires of the lower half-god level who are a step further than gloomy fire and who can hardly find any abnormality in their bodies. Wisdom fire, founder of the Dark Council. It is also the deepest hidden existence in the Dark Council. The power exposed in this huge basin alone exceeds that of all the dark demigods and is many times greater than that of Sumu's subordinates. Thousands of epics and legends. Hundreds of sanctuaries. 10 demigods. This is the hidden power of the Fire of Wisdom. If coupled with the protection of the first speaker of the mountain giant and the power of Wisdom Fire, maybe this mysterious and unpredictable Wisdom Fire, Your Excellency, can really succeed in consecrating God? A touch of hope reappeared in the demigod body and mind of the many onlookers. The fog dissipated, exposing many of his trump cards in the vision of the dark demigods who were on the sidelines seemed to mean that the Fire of Wisdom was about to start its own ceremony of consecration. However, when the energy incarnations of many dark demigods were amazed at the hidden depth and hidden power of the Fire of Wisdom, Mu's attention was attracted by a huge array of thousands of meters in the venue. If you don't pay attention, it's easy to ignore this array. If you don't know enough about the magic circle, it is easy to ignore this magic circle. But Olivia and Sumu, who used to explore the ancient battlefield together, felt the same breath as the ancient battlefield from this huge magic circle. Confusion. Distortion. Out of order. Just the aura emanating from this huge circle made Sumu feel as if he had returned to the ancient battlefield again, facing the chaos and distortion of all kinds of evil processes and the laws and rules of the world. Relying only on those numerous humanoid soul fires is obviously not enough to resist the sniping from the light camp. Perhaps this chaotic, twisted, and disordered array is also a kind of trump card prepared by the Fire of Wisdom? Hum. The fog dissipated. The consecration ceremony of the Fire of Wisdom will start at any time. And in this process, the vibrations of the remaining laws and rules of the plane of death have never stopped. In just a few minutes, more than 10 dark demigods have failed the consecration ceremony. More than half of the dark demigods failed to confer gods, and they were able to successfully escape from the pursuit of the light camp, and very few survived. The rest of the demigods, I am afraid, it is also struggling to support. Conferring gods in darkness has never been an easy process. Even if more than 20 dark demigods are conferred gods at the same time, the chances of sniping a dark demigod from the light camp to successfully confer gods are still small and pitiful. Time flies, minute by second. In no hurry, waiting until the last minute before the end of the dark day of the gods, a terrifying aura suddenly rose from the center of the venue, the one above the altar, rising from the flaming blue-violet soul fire. At the same time, a connection is born between many humanoid soul fires and wisdom fires. When the tens of thousands of humanoid soul fires were kneeling on the ground and praying devoutly to the Fire of Wisdom above the altar, the consecration ceremony of the Fire of Wisdom, it has finally begun.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.